Funny thing about life, it hands you champagne in one hand and a knife in the other, and just when you start to toast to your happily ever after, someone makes sure you know it was just a dress rehearsal for the funeral of your dignity. Mine came with crystal chandeliers, 100 witnesses, and a husband who thought the word barren would sound poetic over the clink of glasses. The room sparkled with champagne bubbles, laughter, and crystal chandeliers. Everyone I loved was there. His parents, my parents, our closest friends, all dressed in black tie, gathered to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary. I was 5 months pregnant, glowing, hopeful, exhausted, but happy. Or so I thought. My husband, Richard, tapped his glass with a spoon, smiling that picture-perfect grin he always wore when cameras were around. I thought he was about to thank me for organizing the gala, or maybe announce the baby's gender, something sweet and memorable. Instead, he said, "I have an announcement to make." The music faded. Chairs shifted, all eyes turned to us. Richard stood tall, adjusted his cufflinks, and looked around the ballroom like a proud politician. "First of all, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate a decade of love, growth, and commitment." He paused. "But it's time for honesty." My heart skipped. "Honesty? I've fallen in love with someone else." Gasps echoed. My fingers froze mid-sip. I looked at him, confused, waiting for the punchline. "She's carrying my child," he added calmly, "and I plan to start a new life with her." Laughter died. Silence replaced it like a slap. People stared, some covered their mouths, others looked at me, and then he twisted the knife. "I'm sorry, Clara," he said, turning to me, "but you've had 10 years and still failed to give me a family. 5 miscarriages, 1 failed IVF. It's not working. We both know that." The word he used next will haunt me forever. Barren. He didn't whisper it. He said it like a closing statement in court. I felt the air vanish from my lungs. My hands went to my belly instinctively. Behind him, a woman stood. His secretary, Chloe, maybe 27, hair like spun gold. Wearing a dress far too tight for someone not trying to make a statement. She placed one hand over a clearly visible baby bump and smiled, as if I'd just been dismissed from my own life. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Someone dropped a glass. My mother gasped, clutching my father's arm. And Richard? He just stood there, like a man proud of his decisions. I tried to speak, but no words came. I had planned this night for months. Every flower, every wine glass, every place card. I arranged it all to celebrate our love. And he chose this stage, this moment, to publicly destroy it. I stood there, frozen, while the man I loved burned our life down with a microphone and a smile. And as my hand hovered over my stomach, I knew one thing for certain: this baby would never know the man standing on that stage. I don't remember walking off the stage. I think my legs moved before my brain caught up. My vision blurred, not from tears, those came later, but from sheer shock. Every cell in my body screamed to run, but my feet were calm, steady, almost mechanical. Voices swirled behind me, gasps, whispers, some stifled laughter. I heard someone say, "Is she going to faint?" Another voice hissed, "He did that in front of her, while she's pregnant?" But no one stopped me, no one touched me, no one dared. I found myself in the hotel's marble hallway. I leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of the weight in my belly and the tightness in my chest. Barren, he called me barren. After everything, after the surgeries, the shots, the losses, I had given up my job for him, put my dreams on hold to become the perfect wife, the perfect host, the perfect partner. I had smiled through every family dinner with his cold, controlling mother. I had forgiven the late nights, the missed anniversaries, the unexplained receipts. All of it. For him. And now, in front of our families and friends, in a room full of photographers and catered filet mignon, he had thrown me away like I was nothing more than a failed project. My phone buzzed, a message from my sister Lila, "Don't go anywhere. I'm coming." Another from my best friend Jane, "I swear to God I'll kill him. Where are you?" I ignored them. I walked slowly to the powder room. My heels echoed on the floor like gunshots in a church. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Mascara still intact, lipstick perfect, hair sleek, but my eyes, they were gone. Like someone else was looking back at me. For a brief moment, I wanted to disappear. To vanish from this city, from this life. Start over somewhere no one knew the name Clara Reynolds. But then, something shifted. The tears didn't come. The breakdown didn't arrive. Instead, a quiet voice inside me said, "He thinks he ended you. Show him he didn't." I pressed a hand to my stomach again. I wasn't barren, not anymore. I was carrying a child, a life, a reason not to break. I didn't know how or when or with what strength, but deep down, something rooted itself in me that night. Not just survival. Vengeance. Behind me, the bathroom door creaked open and a pair of red heels stepped inside. I recognized them instantly. Chloe? The woman who stole my husband. And she wasn't alone. My name is Clara Reynolds, and until that night, I thought I was living a life most women would envy. 37 years old, married to a respected attorney, pregnant after years of heartbreak, and finally starting to breathe again after years of feeling like I was drowning. I wasn't always this composed. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, the oldest of 3 daughters. My dad ran a mechanic shop. My mom was a nurse who worked the night shift. We weren't rich, but we were proud, decent people who believed in hard work and family dinners. I met Richard at a legal aid fundraiser when I was 26. I had just finished grad school in nonprofit management and was helping organize the event. He was 32, confident, charming, and already on track to make partner at one of Chicago's top law firms. When he introduced himself, I remember thinking, this man lives in a completely different world. But he noticed me. He liked that I didn't fawn over him like the others, said I had depth. Within months, we were inseparable. Romantic trips to Lake Tahoe, expensive dinners, flowers delivered to my office for no reason. My friends said he was too polished, too perfect. But I didn't care. I was in love. We married a year later, a picture-perfect wedding on the rooftop of a luxury hotel overlooking the city skyline. My dad cried walking me down the aisle. Richard's family barely smiled. I thought they were just formal, but it went deeper than that. His mother, Judith, never approved of me. I didn't come from their kind of family. She reminded me of that often, in subtle jabs and tight-lipped smiles. Still, I tried. I brought her flowers every Sunday, cooked her favorite meals, hosted holiday dinners with white-glove detail. I wanted to be part of the family so badly it blinded me. After the first miscarriage, Richard held me all night, said we'd try again. After the second, he suggested I take time off work to focus on my health. By the third, he stopped talking about babies and started coming home later. I quit my job, focused on the house, focused on him. I told myself it was a season, a test that many couples face, but it stretched on for years. IVF rounds drained me. Hormone shots bloated me. I smiled in public, cried in the shower, and told myself it will all be worth it. When I finally got pregnant this time, it felt like a miracle. I thought maybe this child would bring us back together. Maybe it would make the pain of the last decade mean something. But I never imagined that the child growing inside me would become the reason he chose to humiliate me in front of the world. Richard changed after the 4th loss. He became quiet, colder. We stopped holding hands. He started spending weekends at the office, and business trips increased from 1 night to 4. When I asked about it, he'd get defensive, accuse me of being clingy, too emotional. I believed him. I thought maybe I was broken. Maybe he was right. It didn't help that I wasn't working anymore. I missed having a purpose outside of cleaning the kitchen twice a day and scheduling fertility appointments. My friends were moving forward, promotions, travel, babies, and I was trapped in a loop of doctor visits and silent dinners. Still, I defended him. When my sister Lila asked why he wasn't with me during my last miscarriage, I lied and said he had court. When my mom asked why he never came to family gatherings anymore, I said he was tired from work. Because if I admitted the truth, that Richard didn't want to be around me, it would shatter the illusion I had clung to for too long. The only person who ever confronted me honestly was Jane. She had been my best friend since college. Fierce, loyal, no filter. She came over one day unannounced and found me on the kitchen floor sobbing with unopened mail scattered around me. "Clara, this isn't love," she said. "This is prison, dressed in designer clothes." I didn't respond. I didn't have the strength to argue. But her words never left me. When I saw those 2 pink lines earlier this year, my first instinct wasn't joy. It was fear. I was terrified it would end again, that I'd fail again, that Richard would leave for good. But something changed me during this pregnancy. I felt more connected to this baby. Stronger. Like I finally had a reason to fight. Richard seemed nicer at first. He brought me tea in bed, drove me to appointments. I thought maybe, just maybe, this was our second chance. We planned the anniversary gala together. Or rather, I planned it, and he approved it. But he smiled more, called me babe again. Even kissed my forehead like he used to. The night before the gala, he kissed my belly and whispered, "We're finally getting our happy ending." I believed him. I let myself believe we were healing. And that's what made his betrayal so brutal. Because it wasn't just unexpected. It was rehearsed, planned, delivered with the calm cruelty of a man who had already erased me from his future. The anniversary gala was held at the Astoria Grand, a 5-star hotel in downtown Chicago, famous for hosting elite events, governor balls, celebrity weddings, and Fortune 500 fundraisers. Booking it required a deposit months in advance, but I spared no expense. I wanted it to be perfect. The ballroom gleamed in gold and ivory. White roses lined every table. Soft jazz floated from the live quartet in the corner. The scent of vanilla candles mixed with expensive cologne. Guests arrived in tuxedos and floor-length gowns. Champagne glasses never went empty. We had over 200 people in attendance. Clients, colleagues, family, media. It was supposed to be a statement. We made it. 10 years of marriage, a baby on the way, a life worth celebrating. I'd spent the last 3 weeks obsessing over every detail. Stationery, lighting, menu tastings, flower arrangements. My clipboard had become a permanent extension of my hand. I wore a custom-made silk gown, deep emerald with sleeves that flowed like water and a neckline that framed my swelling belly with quiet pride. My hair was curled and pinned, makeup soft but intentional. I looked every bit the glowing mother-to-be and loving wife. The program for the night included a welcome toast, dinner service, an awards presentation for Richard's recent legal achievements, and then, of course, his speech. The one he had told me would be about gratitude, legacy, and family. He even let me proofread a version he had written last week. I cried reading it. He mentioned my strength, our journey through infertility, and how this baby was proof that miracles take time. He kissed my hand as I sobbed. Looking back, it was a performance. A lie I wanted so badly to believe, I ignored every red flag leading up to it. For weeks he had been oddly distant but outwardly kind. He took calls in other rooms, but left sweet notes on the fridge. He came home late, but blamed traffic, then made me tea as a peace offering. It was just enough care to make me feel guilty for doubting him. And yet, there were signs. The way he flinched when I touched his shoulder. How he changed the password on his phone. The scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts. He even suggested I not wear heels to the gala. Not because of pregnancy swelling, but because, in his words, you'll draw enough attention already. Now I see what he meant. I was the opening act, and Chloe, the secretary who smiled too brightly and wore red to a black and gold event, was the headliner. The seating chart had been a nightmare. His parents wanted to sit with his firm's senior partners. My parents preferred a quiet corner. Chloe had RSVP'd late, and I didn't know whether to place her with the other staff or with plus ones. Richard told me to let her sit wherever. She won't stay long anyway. She sat 2 tables away from us, alone, dressed like she wanted to be seen. A skin-tight crimson dress, open back, slid up to the thigh. I remember thinking how wildly inappropriate it was, but I was too focused on keeping my posture perfect and my smile warm. My heels hurt, my belly was heavy, but I wanted the world to see. Clara Reynolds still had it all. Dinner was served, speeches began, people clinked glasses and complimented the venue. I overheard whispers about how elegant everything was. Only Clara could pull this off while pregnant, someone said. I soaked it in, silently proud that I had created something flawless, at least on the outside. I noticed Chloe stepping away several times, disappearing into the hallway. She returned each time looking more smug. I told myself not to read into it. And then came the moment. Richard stood, adjusted his tie, and walked to the podium. I reached for my champagne glass, non-alcoholic of course, ready to raise a toast. My fingers were slightly swollen, and I rubbed my wedding ring absently, unaware that my world was about to split in two. His words, at first, sounded familiar. Thank you all for being here to celebrate a decade of love, perseverance, and commitment. The audience clapped politely. But then, his tone shifted. I've learned that love isn't always predictable, he said. Sometimes, life gives us unexpected blessings and forces us to make impossible choices. I glanced up, confused. That's when he looked at me, but not with love, with finality. He turned toward the crowd. I've fallen in love with someone else. Chairs scraped. My heart dropped. She's expecting my child. Chloe stood up, smiling, her bump on display, and then the final blow. Clara has struggled with fertility for years. She's been unable to give me a family. We've tried, but I can't wait anymore. I won't. The word he used wasn't whispered, it echoed, barren. The room erupted. My mother stood in shock. Jane dropped her wine, and somewhere in the middle of the chaos, Chloe blew me a kiss. To understand how Richard Reynolds became my worst betrayal, you have to know who he really is. Not the man the world applauds, but the one behind the tailored suits and polished speeches. Richard was always a man obsessed with appearances. His image was everything. Son of a powerful judge, raised in a wealthy Connecticut household, prepped at boarding schools where emotions were considered weakness. By the time I met him, he had already mastered the art of charm. He knew when to laugh, when to compliment, and exactly what to say to make people feel special or small. When we first dated, that charm was intoxicating. He made me feel seen, elevated. He was generous, but only when others were watching. In private, he was measured, controlling. He tracked our budget religiously, except when it came to himself. He gifted me dresses but criticized when I gained weight. He praised my strength publicly, but minimized my voice privately. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like erosion. Years of wearing down my confidence one sentence at a time. You're too sensitive. Don't embarrass yourself. Maybe you should leave the decisions to me. It wasn't until after our third miscarriage that his mask started to slip. I was grieving. He was calculating. Maybe it's time we accepted the truth, he said one night, cold glass of scotch in hand. Not every woman is meant to be a mother. He said it so casually I couldn't breathe. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a trophy. Someone elegant, well-spoken, photogenic. Someone who made him look good at firm events and political fundraisers. A quiet wife who knew her place and smiled for the camera. A woman who could deliver a child like checking off an item on a resume. And when I couldn't, when my body refused to cooperate, he started pulling away. The physical intimacy died first. Then the conversations. Then the compassion. And somewhere along the way, there was Chloe. She started as a temp, fresh out of college. Blonde, giggly, eager. I remember the first time I met her. Richard introduced us at a holiday mixer. She wore a sequined mini dress and called me Mrs. R. I smiled politely, though something inside me twisted. She was too familiar with him, too comfortable, and he didn't stop her. He laughed at her jokes, defended her when she made mistakes, and when I brought it up, "Don't be jealous," he scoffed. "She's a kid." But that kid became the woman he threw me away for, and the mother of the child he used to erase everything we built. At first, I thought Chloe was just a phase, a rebound fantasy. I told myself Richard would come to his senses. He was nearly 40. What could he possibly have in common with a 20-something assistant who thought lavender lattes and TikTok dances were personality traits? But I underestimated them both. Chloe knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just ambitious, she was calculated. She played the naive, wide-eyed girl in public, but behind closed doors, she maneuvered like a chess master. She learned his schedule, his coffee order, the names of his most influential clients. She mirrored his political views, laughed a beat too long at his tired jokes. She found his weakness and poured herself into it, like poison into wine. And Richard? He fell willingly, not just for her youth or her body, but for what she represented. Ego validation, power, a clean slate. By the time I suspected something real was happening between them, it was too late. I found a receipt in his coat pocket. 2 entrees, 1 bottle of Dom Perignon, a room at the Langham. The night of our 8th anniversary. He said he was at a deposition. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. "You're always emotional," he said. "Maybe that's why we've never had a child." I remember standing in our kitchen, one hand on my belly, the other gripping the counter to keep from collapsing. He didn't even look up from his phone. That was the night I started sleeping in the guest room. Soon after, Chloe stopped pretending to hide. She started showing up at events uninvited, wore perfume I was allergic to, laughed a little louder when I was nearby, left lipstick stains on Richard's coffee mug in his office, just barely visible, like trophies left for me to find. And yet, through all of it, I clung to my marriage, to the man I thought still existed beneath the cruelty. I convinced myself that if I got pregnant, really pregnant, everything would change. And it did, but not the way I imagined. Richard saw my pregnancy not as redemption, but as inconvenience. He began withdrawing money from our joint account without explanation. He moved his things into his office to avoid waking me. He took business trips without telling me, then returned smelling of Chloe's citrus vanilla perfume. The man I married was gone, or maybe he was never really there. And when he stood on that stage, holding a microphone like a dagger, Chloe watching from the shadows, I realized I wasn't dealing with a man in love. I was dealing with a man who had planned my erasure. The moment Richard said the word Baron, it was like the oxygen left the room. For a few seconds, no one moved. I could hear the jazz band falter mid-note, the click of a fork dropped onto china, the faint pop of a champagne bottle opening somewhere in the back, but it all felt far away, like I was underwater. Then came the whispers, rapid, sharp, stinging like bee stings. Did he just say that? Oh my God, is that his secretary? She's pregnant too? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my drink like some woman in a soap opera. I just stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. It echoed, silencing the table. All eyes turned to me. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father looked like he was about to charge the stage. Jane, my best friend, was already halfway out of her seat, her face pale with fury. But I didn't make a scene. I adjusted my dress, smoothed the fabric over my belly, picked up my clutch from the table, and began walking. Slowly, deliberately, straight down the center aisle of the ballroom. I passed Chloe as I walked. She was still standing, one hand on her swollen stomach like it was some kind of prize. She smirked. I didn't even look at her. Richard said something. Clara, wait, but I didn't stop. I walked out through the double doors, out into the hotel hallway, past stunned hotel staff, a photographer frozen with his camera halfway to his face. I kept walking until I reached the elevator, pressed the button, waited. The moment the elevator doors closed behind me, I felt the first tear fall. Just one. My throat burned, my chest tight, but I held it together. I didn't break. Not yet. When I reached the parking garage, my phone buzzed in my clutch. Message after message, missed calls. My sister, my mother, Jane, even one from Richard. I didn't answer any of them. I slid into the back of the waiting town car I'd booked to take us home that night, now just me, and told the driver, drive. Anywhere. I didn't want to go home. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face the silence of the nursery I had spent the last 2 months decorating, the crib I built with my own hands, the stack of onesies I folded and refolded every time I felt a kick, the rocking chair in the corner. That room was supposed to be filled with lullabies and soft light, not betrayal and echoes. The car drove in silence for nearly 20 minutes before I spoke. Can you take me to the lake? I asked softly. The driver nodded, no questions asked. When we arrived at the waterfront, I stepped out slowly. The city lights reflected off the water like 1,000 tiny lies shimmering in the dark. I sat on a cold bench near the shore, pulling my shawl tight around my shoulders, trying to breathe through the ache in my chest. How had it come to this? 10 years. 10 years of sacrifice, of swallowing my pride, of building a life brick by brick, only to have it all shattered in a 15-minute speech. My mind kept replaying his words, the way his voice didn't even tremble, the way he looked relieved to say them. Baron. It rang like a bell I couldn't unhear. And the worst part wasn't the word, it was how easily it left his mouth, like he'd rehearsed it, as if he wanted it to land, to humiliate. I thought of my baby, this tiny, fluttering life inside me. The one I prayed for, cried for, bled for. The one I was already loving more than anything in this world. I wasn't barren, I was a mother, and I would be a damn good one. That realization sparked something inside me, not rage, not yet, but clarity. I pulled out my phone. Jane had left 7 missed calls, 2 texts. Say the word, I'll break his nose. You okay? Please tell me where you are. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Clara? Where the hell are you? Are you safe? I'm by the lake, I said. Just sitting. I'm coming to get you. No, not yet. I need a minute, but I'm okay. A pause, then quietly. He's disgusting, Clara. What he did tonight, unforgivable. I know, I whispered, and it wasn't spontaneous. What do you mean? He planned it, Jane. That wasn't some emotional outburst. That was a statement, a clean exit. The silence on the line told me she understood, and then I said the words that started everything. I want a lawyer. A good one. I want to destroy him. Because in that moment, sitting by the cold lake with a child in my belly and betrayal in my bones, I realized I might have just lost a husband, but he was about to lose everything. The next morning, I woke up in Jane's guest room, still wearing the same emerald gown from the gala. My hair was tangled, my heels abandoned at the door. I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Richard's face at the podium. Chloe's smug expression, the ripple of gasps after he said that word, barren. The sunlight through the curtains was soft, warm even, but inside me, everything felt cold. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, unsure of what hour it was or if I even cared. My phone buzzed beside me, but I couldn't bring myself to check it. Jane knocked softly before entering, holding a tray with oatmeal, toast, and ginger tea. "Try to eat something," she said gently. I sat up slowly, my body sore, not from anything physical, but from emotional whiplash. Every part of me felt heavy. "I don't know how to move forward," I whispered. Jane sat beside me. "You don't have to move today. Just breathe. Just be here." She didn't pressure me to talk, just stayed close. That day, I didn't leave the room. I sat in the same spot, food untouched, phone ignored, thoughts looping like a nightmare on repeat. The nursery, the announcement, the shame. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was humiliated. My pain wasn't private anymore. Everyone knew. My family, his firm, our friends. The scandal had already hit the gossip blogs. Someone had recorded the moment on their phone. By noon, it was circulating online. High-profile lawyer dumps pregnant wife for secretary during gala speech. I stared at the headline until my vision blurred. I felt like a ghost inside my own life. The next day, Jane drove me to my OB appointment. I didn't want to go, but she insisted. "You need to know the baby's okay," she said. I nodded, numb. At the clinic, I kept my head down, sunglasses on, praying not to be recognized. The nurse was kind. She didn't ask questions. During the ultrasound, I saw my baby's tiny hand curled like a fist, strong, alive, innocent. And that's when I broke. Tears flooded my face, unstoppable. I gripped Jane's hand and sobbed, not just for Richard or Chloe or the humiliation, but for myself, for everything I had given up. For the little girl who dreamed of being a mother, and the woman who believed love would be enough. And as the sound of the heartbeat filled the room, I realized just how much I'd been holding in, and how close I had come to losing myself. The days blurred together after that. Jane gave me space, but never left me alone. She worked from home to stay nearby, cooked simple meals, left sticky notes on my mirror with little reminders. "You are still whole. You are not what he said. You're already the better parent." I wanted to believe her. But believing takes strength, and mine had been drained dry. My sister Lila came over with maternity clothes and a bag of groceries. My mom called every morning, crying more than I did. My dad said little, but when he finally spoke, it hit me hard. "He's a coward, Clara. But you're your mother's daughter." Still, I couldn't go home. I couldn't walk into that house filled with memories of a marriage that was never real. The scent of his cologne still lingered in the master bedroom. The pictures on the wall mocked me. So I stayed in Jane's spare room until one afternoon a courier arrived with a package. It was a set of legal documents. From Richard. Divorce papers. He wanted to settle things amicably, the note read, to avoid unnecessary drama. Drama? He humiliated me in front of 200 people and called me barren on a microphone. And now he wanted peace? The pain returned like a fresh wound. But this time it wasn't just sadness. It was anger. I tore the envelope in half. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. Every time I blinked, I saw Richard's cold smile, Chloe's polished nails on his arm, the way people looked at me after his announcement. And then I remembered something. My name was still on everything. The house, the investment property, our accounts. I had stepped away from my job to support him, but I had kept my financial identity. I had paid for the down payment on the house. I had made the smart decisions. I had receipts. Richard thought he had all the power. He was wrong. The next morning, I got dressed in real clothes for the first time in a week. Combed my hair. Wore lipstick. Jane looked up from her laptop and froze. "Where are you going?" I grabbed my purse. "To see a lawyer." Because if Richard thought he could take everything from me and walk away clean, he clearly forgot who he married. I walked into the law firm of Patel and Rourke at 9 a.m. sharp, dressed in a navy blazer that still fit me pre-pregnancy, heels slightly lower than usual but sharp enough to make a statement. The receptionist looked up, startled. "I have an appointment with Maya Rourke," I said. "She's expecting you, Mrs. Reynolds, 5th floor, conference room B. Mrs. Reynolds for now." Maya Rourke was known across Chicago as the Ice Queen. She didn't take many cases, and when she did, the opposition usually settled before ever seeing a courtroom. Her reputation was forged through high-profile divorces, celebrity custody battles, and corporate takeovers. But what most people didn't know, she was also my college roommate. We hadn't spoken in years, not from bad blood, just life pulling us in different directions. She went into law, I went into nonprofit work. She stayed sharp, I softened. But the moment she saw me walk through the door, she stood up and hugged me like no time had passed. "Clara," she said softly, stepping back to study my face. I saw the video. I looked away. I figured. She motioned for me to sit. "Let's get to work." I pulled a folder from my bag. Bank records, home titles, investment statements, tax returns, and most importantly, proof that I was the primary financial contributor in the marriage. Maya flipped through the paperwork, eyebrows raised. "Clara, this is solid. You funded the mortgage?" "Yes, I used an inheritance from my grandfather. And the investment condo?" "My name only. Bought it before we married." "Retirement accounts?" "He didn't have any. Said it wasn't necessary because his firm had a partner package. But I have my own Roth IRA, stocks, and a savings portfolio, all separate." Maya leaned back in her chair, smiling slightly. "You might be the most financially prepared client I've had all year." "I wasn't trying to be," I said. "I just wanted to be safe." She nodded. "Smart women always do." Then she asked the most important question. "What do you want, Clara?" I paused. "For him to feel what I felt," I said honestly. "I want him to lose something that matters. I want the world to see who he really is." Maya's eyes glinted. "Then let's begin." And just like that, I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the architect of a plan he'd never see coming. Over the next week, Maya built a case that was equal parts elegant and ruthless. We began with the timeline. She noted the overlap between Chloe's pregnancy and the last round of IVF Richard had pretended to support. She pulled financials, hotel receipts, jewelry store purchases, dinners at places I'd never been, all paid for from our shared account. "Dissipation of marital assets," Maya said. "Judges don't like that." She subpoenaed phone records, emails, even a set of private firm correspondence Richard had arrogantly sent from his work email. All of it painted a crystal-clear image. While I was injecting hormones and hoping for a child, he was building a secret life, with my money. But that wasn't the twist. The real twist came from an old envelope I found while packing the closet at Jane's place. It was a dusty, thick manila envelope labeled, "Family Trust, GN." My grandfather, George Nichols, was a self-made industrialist. I had inherited a portion of his estate before I turned 30, but I never touched the principal. Richard knew about the trust, but only vaguely. I had always downplayed it, too focused on being normal. Maya read through the documents and blinked. "Clara, do you realize how much this is worth?" "I haven't checked in years." She shook her head. "This is generational wealth, and it's protected. He has no legal claim to any of it." That night, I sat alone in Jane's guest room, holding the papers in my lap. My hands trembled, not from fear, but power. All this time I thought I was the one left with nothing. But I wasn't just the wife he discarded. I was the granddaughter of George Nichols, the sole surviving heir to a legacy he could never buy. The next morning we filed. Maya drafted a petition for divorce, citing adultery, asset dissipation, and reputational damage. We attached proof. Screenshots. Bank statements. Witness statements. We sent the papers directly to his firm, served by a process server during his Monday meeting. He never saw it coming. And for the first time in months, I slept deeply. Because Richard didn't just cheat on a pregnant woman, he underestimated the wrong one. 6 weeks passed, and each one chipped away the old version of me, revealing someone I hadn't seen in years, a woman with fire in her spine and clarity in her eyes. It started small. I moved out of Jane's house and into my late grandfather's estate, an ivy-covered home in Oak Brook that I had inherited but never touched. Richard always said it was too far from the city and too grand for a couple like us. Now it was perfect, quiet, private, secure. I hired a decorator, not for beauty but transformation. I turned the old reading room into a nursery, filled with soft yellows and forest greens. No pinks, no blues, just hope. The library became my home office, where Maya and I worked late into the night building our case and preparing for war. My days became structured. Yoga in the morning, emails after breakfast, doctor appointments twice a month, and therapy once a week. The trauma wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled me. Then came the makeover, not the glam kind, not yet, but a spiritual one. A shift in posture, a return to the woman I was before Richard, before I shrank myself to fit his world. I wore what I wanted. I cut my hair. I stopped apologizing for taking up space, and then I went public. It started with one interview, an anonymous op-ed in a women's legal journal. When your husband's betrayal becomes a headline, I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The details were enough. Emails poured in, support, solidarity, even whispers from other women in Richard's past. Maya said, "It's time. Time for the gala. Not another one of Richard's flashy fundraisers, this one was mine." The George Nichols Foundation held an annual scholarship benefit, and this year I would be the keynote speaker. My name, my stage, my legacy. And I was going to reclaim it. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was becoming something Richard couldn't erase. The night of the George Nichols Foundation Gala arrived with a crisp November chill. The venue sparkled, lit by crystal chandeliers and warmed with gold and emerald accents. It was the kind of night Richard used to dream of hosting. And now he was nowhere in sight. I stood backstage in a deep green velvet gown, one that hugged my growing belly like an embrace, not an inconvenience. My makeup was soft but defined, my hair swept up in a way that revealed my collarbone and the quiet strength beneath it. People stared when I entered the room, not in pity, but in awe. I wasn't just Clara Reynolds' scorned wife. I was the daughter of a legacy. The mother of a future, the woman who refused to disappear. When I took the stage, the room fell silent. Not a fork clinked, not a whisper stirred. I looked at hundreds of faces, donors, alumni, students, press, and I spoke. 6 months ago, I believed my story was over. I believed betrayal had broken me, that humiliation had defined me, but I was wrong. I paused, hands resting over my belly, because the truth is, sometimes the fall shatters what was never built on solid ground, and from those broken pieces, we rebuild stronger. The applause was thunderous. I didn't cry, I smiled. After the speech, people came up one by one, women, young girls, even older couples. They told me I gave them hope, that they saw themselves in me, that they were rooting for me. And then I saw him, Richard, standing by the exit, no Chloe, no smirk, just disbelief. He walked toward me slowly. "You look different," he said. "I am. I didn't think you'd survive," I cut in. "Yeah, I know." He shifted. "I got the notice, the subpoenas, the trust." I smiled politely. "Then you know what's coming." He nodded. "Clara, I made mistakes." "No, Richard, you made choices." And with that I turned and walked away, because I no longer needed his apology to reclaim my worth. 2 weeks after the gala, Richard's world began to unravel, piece by calculated piece. It started when his firm received a whistleblower complaint. A copy of his emails and calendar entries during the last year had been submitted anonymously, raising questions about his use of firm resources for personal affairs. The board launched an internal ethics investigation. Chloe was suspended. Richard was placed on administrative leave, pending review. Maya smiled when she got the news. "We haven't even brought out the heavy artillery yet," she said. "Because that came next. We filed an official civil suit alleging reputational damage, financial misconduct, marital asset misuse, and intentional emotional harm, especially considering the public nature of his betrayal." Maya attached everything, every bank transaction, every email, and a transcription of his gala speech. Then came the media. Someone leaked the lawsuit filing to a local journalist who had previously covered Richard's rise in the legal world. The article hit the front page of a major online publication. Rising attorney faces civil suit from pregnant wife he publicly humiliated. It was brutal. It quoted lines from his speech, compared timelines of Chloe's pregnancy and our last round of IVF. It even noted the odd silence from his firm, who refused to defend him. Public opinion flipped overnight, from admiration to disgust, from praise to shame. I wasn't just the forgotten wife anymore. I was the voice of every woman who'd been thrown aside after giving her all. And that power? It wasn't petty. It was justice. Meanwhile, Chloe tried to spin her own narrative. She posted an Instagram photo holding her bump with the caption, "Love always wins." The comments were merciless. "She's not even divorced yet. You ruined a marriage." Hope it was worth it. Then someone found a TikTok she'd posted in Richard's office 6 months ago. Her feet up on his desk, bragging about sleeping her way to the top. It went viral for all the wrong reasons. And just like that, Chloe went from secretary to scandal, dragging Richard with her. But the final blow wasn't social media. It was the courtroom. Richard tried to delay proceedings, requesting mediation, then an out-of-court settlement. Maya refused. "We go public," she said. "He made this public. He will answer publicly." The day of the hearing, I walked into court in a tailored charcoal gray maternity suit. Strong, controlled. Press was gathered outside. The air buzzed with anticipation. Richard sat across from me in a wrinkled blazer and hollow eyes. Chloe wasn't with him. She'd deleted her accounts and reportedly gone back to her hometown. He looked up once, and then looked away. Maya opened the session with a statement that would later be quoted in every news outlet. "This is not just a divorce. This is the dismantling of a lie." She laid out everything. How I had supported Richard emotionally and financially, how I carried the weight of fertility treatments alone, how he had used our shared accounts to fund an affair, then destroyed my reputation to justify his betrayal. Then she read the transcript of the gala speech. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch, because now I knew who I was. The judge was stern. He had seen many cases, but few so flagrant, few so cruel. He ruled swiftly. I retained full ownership of our home, the investment property, and all assets under my name. Richard was ordered to pay damages for public defamation, including therapy costs, legal fees, and prenatal medical expenses. The number was staggering, enough to rattle even him. And perhaps the most satisfying line? The court finds Mr. Reynolds' actions to be both morally and legally reprehensible. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I made one short statement. No woman deserves to be silenced after being publicly destroyed. Today I speak not just for myself, but for all of us. The clip aired nationally. Within 24 hours, Richard's firm released a press statement announcing his termination due to violations of ethical conduct. Just like that, his career was over. And I was finally free. Because justice isn't always loud, but when it lands, it echoes for years. 3 months after the court ruling, I stood barefoot in the nursery I had once painted with trembling hands. Now it smelled of lavender and fresh wood. The rocking chair I'd chosen was nestled beside the window, and soft sunlight bathed the crib in a warm glow. The room wasn't just ready. I was ready. That morning, I signed the final divorce decree. My name was legally changed back to Clara Nichols, my mother's maiden name. A name that meant strength, legacy, and renewal. A name untouched by shame or betrayal. That same day, I received an email from a publisher. They had read my article, the anonymous one I wrote under a pen name, and they wanted to turn it into a book, a memoir on resilience, dignity, and public healing. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. Yes. And that night, as I lay in bed with one hand on my belly, I whispered the words I once never thought I'd say again. I'm proud of you. The baby kicked gently in response. 2 weeks later, my son was born. His name is Elijah George Nichols. Elijah, meaning Yahweh is my God. George, after my grandfather. Nichols, after the strength of the women who raised me. He came into the world just after sunrise, quiet and alert. The nurse placed him on my chest and I cried. Not out of pain, but peace. He was perfect. Complete. Mine. And I realized in that moment that every shattered piece of my past had led to the creation of this one beautiful truth. 6 months later, my book launched. We held the event at a women's center downtown. I sat beside survivors of every kind. Abandonment, betrayal, abuse. They didn't see me as a celebrity or a headline. They saw me as one of them, and that's all I ever wanted to be. The book hit the bestseller list in 3 weeks. Not because I was famous, but because truth resonates. Because women are tired of being told to stay quiet, stay small, stay grateful for crumbs. The foundation I once used to write small checks for scholarships, I now chaired it. We expanded into legal aid for women in high-conflict divorces. Maya helped lead the legal team pro bono. Every story we helped rewrite was a victory. One afternoon, as I exited a bookstore, I spotted a familiar face in a crowd. It was Richard. He didn't look the same. The sharp edges were gone, the arrogance dulled. He walked with a manila folder under one arm, his shoes scuffed, his suit too large. He stopped when he saw me. "Clara," he said softly. I waited. "I lost everything," he said. "My job, Chloe left, the baby, she had a miscarriage. I didn't feel joy, I didn't feel pity, just peace." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. He nodded, shame washing over him like a second skin. "I guess I never really knew you." I smiled gently. "No, you didn't." Then I walked away, and I didn't look back, because I had a son waiting for me, a life I built with scars and strength, a future no one could tarnish. To every woman listening, let me say this: your story doesn't end where someone else leaves. Sometimes it begins there. Dear friend, life has a way of dressing cruelty in fine clothes. Sometimes it arrives smiling, glass in hand, ready to toast your happiness, only to drain it in front of everyone. And in those moments, it's easy to believe you've been stripped bare, left with nothing but shame. I know, I've stood in that silence. But here's the truth the world won't tell you. You are never truly empty. Even when someone tries to define you by your lowest moment, you still carry something they can't touch: your ability to rebuild. That's the gift and the burden of being human. The Stoics say we can't control what happens to us, only how we meet it. At first I thought that meant swallowing the pain, pretending it didn't matter. But resilience isn't silence. It's not smiling through the knife in your back. It's learning to remove the blade, tend the wound, and decide who you'll become after. The people who betray us often think they've written our ending, but they don't realize we're the ones holding the pen. Yes, they can take chapters from us. Yes, they can leave stains on the page, but the story is still ours to finish. And the ending can be so much brighter than they ever imagined. If you're walking through your own storm right now, hear me. This is not the sum of your worth. This is not the final scene. One day, you will wake up and realize the person you've become, the one forged in fire, could never have existed without the heartbreak you've endured. And that version of you will be unshakable. So let them go. Let the past be a place you visit only to remember how far you've come. And step forward not as a survivor defined by what was done to you, but as the author of a life built on your terms. To every woman who's been underestimated, may your scars be your crown, your truth be your armor, and your peace be your loudest revenge. If my story touched you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, not just for me, but so more women can find their voice too. Together, we can make sure no one walks through the fire alone. Thank you for listening and for standing with me.